Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jay Marsden. I am an elder law estate planning attorney as well as a financial advisor here in Holliston. And I apologize, I tend to talk and walk. I've been given specific instructions that I am only allowed to stay right here on this runway. So if it looks like I'm kind of hanging out, a bit of a supermodel vibe, I just want you to know what that looks like, and that's why I'm doing that. So that way you won't be distracted. So today's topic is giving or gifting to your favorite subject, your grandchildren, okay? And why am I the one talking about this? Well, I'll give you a little bit about my background. As I mentioned, I'm an estate planning elder law attorney. I have been an estate planning and elder law attorney since 2002. I went to Suffolk Law School at night while I worked at Fidelity Investments as an investment advisor. And my last couple of years at Fidelity, I was in a high net worth group for clients who had a substantial amount of money with Fidelity, and I was responsible for handling all of their investments and all of their financial relationships with Fidelity. And as part of that, my interests as a financial advisor always leaned more towards the planning and the estate planning side of that job. And those two worlds come together, they kind of collide a little bit. You know, you're talking about estate planning, you're talking about money. And so we talk about a lot of these topics that we're going to talk about today with our clients, and we continue to talk about them with our clients today. But the question that we get all the time, and we get it right now, especially at this time of the year, is how do I do not grifting, that's already happened, that's happening down in Washington, D.C. How do we do gifting to our grandkids? And I think the reason that we're getting those questions a lot this month is, many of you may be aware of this, but at the end of the month, the lifetime gifting amount is changing from about $13 million a person down to $5 million a person. So if there's anybody here who wants me to talk about giving away $13 million, let me know. I'll definitely take your questions, and we'll talk about that ad nauseum. But the numbers are almost sort of, you know, kind of sideline issues, because at the end of the day, the amount of money and the gifting and the things that you want to do for people as part of your legacy and as part of probably a lifetime of generosity when it comes to your family, people have questions about what's the best way to do it. And so we get questions all the time. There are some great ways to do it. There are some challenging ways to do it. There are some wrong ways to do it, depending on the players, depending on the family dynamics, and depending on how it works. So the first thing we're going to talk about is how much can I give? The second thing we're going to talk about are different ways to give to grandchildren. And then the third thing we're going to talk about is, if there are some challenges involved, what might be a better way or a better alternative to give? So we always try to frame things in ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. Makes it a little bit easier to kind of manage it in my head, and that way I don't forget about it. So the first thing I want to ask everybody is, and if you know the question, answer the question. And if you answer or ask a question, I have a gift bag for you here that Lauren was so kind to put together right over there. And if you don't ask a question, you probably get one too. But that kind of helps kind of feed the conversation. So the first question is, how much can you give away? You start that question. If anybody wants to raise their hand or just shout out an answer, let me know. What do you got?
Is it like, somebody was saying it was like $30,000?
All right, that's $30,000. Anybody else? And if you get it wrong, you have to give me the amount of money you guess.
Right now it's 19 per gift a year.
Got it? Anybody else? That's the answer right there. You owe me 30. 19 is absolutely right. Okay?
Disability, that's okay.
But let's talk about what that means, right? So giving away $19,000. So the idea, so the number used to be a million years ago. Everybody had it baked into their brain. It was $10,000. And then the government indexed it because it just hadn't gone up in a while. So now they throw an indexer on it. So every year it goes up a little bit, and they round up to the next $1,000. Right here it's about $19,000. Now what that means is that's the amount of money that you can give to anybody you want, and you just don't have to tell Uncle Sam that you did it. There's no paperwork to fill out. You want to write a check to somebody for $19,000, see Lauren in the back, she'll take the envelopes. You can write a check to anybody you want. Nobody cares. The idea behind this was that you go to a wedding, you give a birthday gift, you give a Christmas gift, and Uncle Sam and the IRS did not want to have to be in the business of chasing down gift tax returns for every $250, $500 gift that you might give away. So they gave this blanket dollar amount to make it easier, and then everybody jumped on it and said, look, I can give away $19,000 to anybody I want. So if you think about it, depending on what your goals are, what your plans are, you can give away $19,000 to a daughter, you can give away $19,000 to a son, you can give away $19,000 to their spouses, you can give away $19,000 to all of their kids. And if you see how that works and you do some math on a regular basis, that's a substantial way for you to transfer a legacy, move money, help your kids out, whatever you think you want to do. And then a lot of folks will time it around this time of the year, and they'll say, well, look, my kid's buying a house next year. I want to try to help him out. I'm going to give him $19,000 in December. I'm going to give him $19,000 January 2nd, and then they're going to use that money to go buy a house, down payment on a house. That's what a lot of this looks like, right? So $19,000 is the number that sticks in everybody's head.
Is that a max?
That's the most, oh, you beat me to it. You're reading ahead. That's the most you can give away without having to tell Uncle Sam that you did it, okay?
Not per year?
That's per year and per person. Now, you can give away less, and here's why I say that. A lot of people get caught up in that, if I don't give 19, then why even bother? Okay? You can give away $1,000, $5,000, $10,000, $2,000, $100, doesn't matter. 19 is the max you can give away without having to file a gift tax return with Uncle Sam. Okay? Now, what do you think happens if you give away $25,000? We heard gift taxes. I heard you go to jail. I heard, okay. Here's what happens. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Well, one thing. So you can give away more than $19,000. You just have to tell Uncle Sam that you did it. So if you gave away $19,000, no gift tax return. If you give away $30,000, the math is easier, $30,000, you have to tell Uncle Sam. 19 of it, no problem. That's a freebie. But you gave away 30. You gave away 11,000 extra dollars. All you have to do is tell Uncle Sam, I gave away 30. 19 of it counts. Nobody cares about that. The other 11 goes on a gift tax return. You file that with the government. You file that with Uncle Sam. You don't pay anything. And the person who got the money doesn't pay anything. All right? You just got to tell them you did it. And then what they do is they take that form and they put that in the big file cabinet up in the sky. And then when you go to your great reward, they go back and they look. And they say, how many gifts did you give out over your lifetime? Did you give away more than, today we talked about it a minute ago, it's 13. Going to go to 5. So they're going to add that up. And then if you've given away more than that amount, there might be a gift tax that's due. For most folks, there's not. Okay? So you can always give away more. I'm not saying you have to. But a lot of people are under the impression if I give them more, it either costs them money or it costs me money. The answer is it doesn't. You just got to tell somebody you gave it to them. Okay? Now, there are 2 areas that you can give away as much as you want, and you don't have to tell anybody about it. One of them is if you pay somebody's medical bills. All right? If you give money directly to a hospital or a medical institution, there's no limit on that amount of money. And then the other thing, and this is where it sometimes comes up, is if you pay somebody's tuition or you give the money to a educational institution. That is not subject to the $19,000. Where that might come in is we have grandparents all the time that say, well, I want to give my grandkid $19,000 or some number, and I want to give it to them for tuition. our answer is, well, don't give it to them because you have these limits. Pay it right to the school. That's a better way to go. No problems, less paperwork, very straightforward. So how much can you give? 19. Can you give more? Sure you can. Can you give less? Absolutely. If you give more, does it cause problems? No. It creates a form or some paperwork that has to go to the IRS, and you can give an unlimited amount when you're paying for things like medical bills and tuition bills. Everybody good?
Why would you even bother reporting it at all anyway?
So you're asking the lawyer, if I heard the question correctly, why would you even bother reporting it at all? I'll answer that question when I turn this microphone off. We can talk in the hallway. The answer to your question, in most cases when you're dealing with the IRS, the answer to the question is, if you don't tell them and they find out, they make it painful. That's why. Taxes, penalties, things like that. So that's the reason that most folks are worried about it. It's not that they understand what they're supposed to do, but if people are playing a little fast and loose, that's what they're worried about. They're worried about it. If for some reason it shows up somewhere, how, I don't know, but if it shows up somewhere, that's what people are worried about. That's what happens if they don't do it, okay? So gifting, how much, how do you do it? That's kind of the idea. That's the framework of the dollars that you're usually talking about when we talk about gifting. Now, the second thing we talked about was, how do we do the gifting? Was that a question?
Sort of. We're very cautious about taking money out of our savings account towards that 19,000.
Sure.
So we don't take any. We take slightly less than 10,000 at a time, because that's a red flag off our account for the bank.
Yeah, that's a different red flag. That red flag is if somebody deposits more than $10,000, the bank has to file a report, if you will, with the banking regulation that says we took in more than $10,000 in cash. That's why you see a lot of these $9,999 deposits that kind of get broken up, and that's the reason for that, is that the banks have to file a report for that. That's why they do it. That's why they do it. So what's the best way to give it? Well, you can give it a couple of different ways. There's a couple of very sort of formal ways that you can give it. One of the ways that we hear people giving a lot of money is they'll put money into what's called a 529 plan, okay? 529 plan, generally speaking, is a tax-deferred account that's specifically designed for college savings, educational savings, usually for school, usually for college, where you put money in the account, it grows tax-deferred for a big long time until somebody turns 18 or 19, goes to college, and then as long as the money, when it comes out and is used for educational expenses, the government doesn't really hassle you on the taxes, okay? This we see a lot. We usually see this a lot when the new grandkid shows up and somebody says, what a great idea, I want to put away a little bit of money, and then they start thinking the power of compounding, the market's going to get rolling, and that'll hopefully turn my $5,000 gift into a $50,000 gift. That's the goal. That's the idea behind it. Somebody just has to come up with the gifting idea, and what a lot of people will do is they'll set one of these up for the grandkids, and then not just grandparents, but everybody will contribute to it over time and kind of use it as a slush fund to sort of throw money at it for college. We see these all the time. They're a great way to save. If your child doesn't use the money for college, let's say they get a scholarship or something of that nature, the money can be assigned to another sibling, so one of their brothers or sisters. If they need the money more, you can have money in one account and two accounts, and this kid gets a scholarship, the money can be moved over, and then more money can be applied. You get kind of double the benefit. Everybody's happy. Mom and dad are thrilled, okay? That's one of the ways that you can go about doing it. What people don't like about the 529 plan is two things. Number one, they come with these very sort of pre-packaged investment portfolios. You know, you put it in, and people will pick what's called a time-based portfolio, which means if your kid is really little, or if your grandchild is really little, you get a more aggressive portfolio, and as they get older, the portfolio kind of dials down in risk until the year or two before they go to school. It's very conservative so that it protects the money so it's there when they want to use it, okay? That's fine. You know, that's the trade-off. Some people wish they had a little more flexibility. We'll talk about another option in a minute about that, but that's one of the things that folks don't like. The other things that folks don't like is if the kid doesn't get a scholarship and the grandkid doesn't go to school, well, what happens with the money? Well, they treat it like an IRA. If you take the money out, you might have to pay a penalty on it if it's not used for education. That's not the worst thing. You know, we've had grandparents come in and say, I put all this money in a 529 plan for my grandkid. They're not using it for school. They want to take the money out. They want to start building their real estate portfolio. I'm going to give them the money, but they got to pay this penalty. Okay, you got 18 years of tax-deferred growth. They're going to pay a penalty. It's not the end of the world. It's still going to get them, you know, leapfrogging them into what we think is where they want their future to go. And you play a very special role in that, just like you would if you'd paid for school. So there's still benefits. There's still wins to doing it. And it really is something where, you know, when the kids are 18, when the kids are really, really young, if you can make a sizable, to a certain extent, lump sum contribution, it really sets them on the path for success, assuming the market cooperates and gets rolling. Before I started talking, somebody asked me about, you know, I want to help out my kids. You know, how do I help out my kids? Well, I can tell you, as having two kids who just finished college, and when you have a couple of tuition bills staring you in the face, if you had made that decision 18 years ago to put away a little bit of money and let the market hopefully work to your advantage to get this thing rolling, that's one way that if college tuition bills are very important and you get in front of those early enough on, you're making a huge impact on your kids not having to come up with 150, 200 grand a year, well, 200 grand for 4 years of school, maybe more depending on where they go. They go to BC, you're looking at 350, 400 grand. It's huge money. So if you're looking to get in front of something where you're really helping your kids out, picking up the cost of a substantial portion, and I highlight this all the time, you don't have to pay for all of it. You know, when my girls went to school, I said to them, look, my deal with you is you're on the hook for 1 year of school. So right away, I cut my college tuition costs by 25% by saying, you guys are on the hook for 1 year. You don't have to get all of it, but you can get a chunk of it if that's your objective, if that's your goal. So the 529 is a great way to kind of start this process off. Yes?
What impact does having a 501k program have on the possibility of getting scholarships?
Sure. Yeah, so if they have a big 529 plan, it could impact whether or not or how much money they get. I don't know the answer off the top of my head because that FAFSA form requires a rocket scientist degree from MIT to fill out, which I don't have, but it has some impact in that. Now, let's talk about that, because another way to hold that money out is you could just pay that directly to the school. You're just going to have to pay more. You're not going to get the benefit of 18 years of tax-deferred growth. You're going to have to come up with that and throw that at school directly. So I don't know the direct answer to that, but it does have an impact. It does have an impact. Yeah.
Can the 529 funds be used for private high school, or does it have to be college?
I believe they are available for private high school as well. Yes.
The same fund or a separate?
Nope, same fund, same 529. Just has to be what they call qualified educational expenses. And I believe high school counts for that, especially private high school. Yep.
Do you know what the penalty is if they don't use the money?
10%, just like your IRA. It's a 10% penalty. Yep. Yeah, it's not too bad. It's not painful. It's not painful. I mean, and again, if you're using it for good, not instead of evil, all the reasons that it works out are there, right?
As long as you're not setting up drug deals.
Exactly. That's right. Different profit margin. So that's a 529 plan. Something similar that we used to see a lot when I was at Fidelity prior to the invention of the 529 plan was we used to see a lot of what's called UTMA or UGMA accounts, uniform transfers to minors or uniform gift to minors accounts. Basically what you're doing is you're taking money, you're putting it into an account, you're making an irrevocable gift to this account. It belongs to the kid when they turn 18 years old. And that's all you're doing. You're putting it in what we used to call custodial accounts. It's for the benefit of the grandchild in this case. They get it. You can't unring the bell. It doesn't have any tax-deferred growth to it, but you can invest it in anything that you want to invest in it. And that's the big difference between this and the 529. And it's not specifically for college. The grandchildren just get it whenever they turn the age of majority, in Massachusetts 18, and then they can go ahead and they can do whatever they want to do with it. So if you were an investor yourself and you wanted to transfer 100 shares of Tesla to your grandkid rather than give them the money, you would set up a custodial account, you would transfer the Tesla shares, transfer your Coca-Cola shares, transfer, pick any one you want to transfer, and then those shares go into the child's account. And then from there, whatever happens with the market, whatever happens with the security, happens with that account. Some grandparents have used this as a way to say, look, you know what? This is a bond, believe it or not, this is a bonding opportunity for me and my kid. My grandkid has a real interest in business and interest in the stock market. And so we've used this to get together and talk about how the stock market's done, how these stocks have done. Let's pick a little portfolio. It's a way to give your kid, raise your grandkids' money IQ by helping them set up their own portfolio and letting them see how the market can go against you and how it can go for you and how that might look. Again, easy way to do it. Set it up, put the money in there, and then what's nice about it is, or what's not nice about it, depending on your grandkid, they get it when they turn 18. Okay? Same thing, mostly used, or used to be mostly used for college. Now it's just a way to transfer wealth. Okay?
Now, could you set it up, say you don't have grandchildren, okay? But you have great nephews and nieces. Could you do the same thing?
Sure. Yeah. Anybody you want? Yeah. Anybody you want?
What about the 529 versus a trust fund?
Oh, we'll get to trusts. We'll get there. Yep. So that's the idea. So those are two ways that you can go ahead and you can give money to your grandkids. Again, any dollar amount, anything you want. Yep.
Does the child have to get the money at 18, or
They
can
do.
we delay it?
They have to get the money. Now, my question used to always be, do they know about it? All right, because if the statements are coming to you, in theory, they don't know what they don't know. And you guys all know, when you're 18 years old, you don't really think much about money because you're just spending it on DoorDash and Starbucks and all that stuff. So they're not thinking about a portfolio. So that's the question. Do they know about it? And and when is it the right time for them to get it, right? And that question feeds right into what you just mentioned, which is another way for you to give money to them is either to give it to them outright. So you're not giving it to a 529, you're not giving it to a custodial account, you're giving it to them outright. And then it's a case of, is this the right thing to do? Can they just handle the idea of a regular gifting strategy like this? And so what I always try to do is I always try to say to my kids, if I'm going to give you some money, if your grandparents are going to give you some money, what are you going to do with it? Are you going to keep it in your bank account? Now, one of my daughters would hang on to every nickel she gets. She's really got that head straight about her. She's kind of get to the point where she wants to start thinking about this investment concept and saving some money. My other daughter is still in school, still in college, so the way she looks at things is very different. They're a couple of years apart, so she's just not there yet. They just think about things a little bit differently. So if you give the money to them outright, once that check gets cashed, they're in the win. So you're kind of left to hope that they do the right things with the money. You can talk to them about it. You can beg them to do the right thing with it, but you just don't know. And we've all been there, right? Money, it's like water in your hands, right? As soon as you get it, it's gonzo, right? You just don't know. And for kids, that's the same thing, right? They just don't have that money sense yet. So you got to sort of figure that out and say, is this a way to do that? If you don't want to give it to them outright, we're going to talk about a trust in 1 second, you can give it to mom and dad. And you don't even have to tell the kids that you gave it to them. You could give the money to your kids on the QT, and you could say, look, here's a couple of bucks. Here's $5,000. I want this to be used for the grandkids. Put it aside. Put it in a 529. They could do it. You could give it to them, and they could do it.
I don't think we trust them to do it.
That's a real concern, right? Some people might say, I'm going to give it to my grandkids because my kids are terrible with money, right? And so I don't want to give it to my kids because it will never make its way where it's supposed to make it. It will never have the intended effect that I want it to have. So I don't want to do that. So I have to figure out something else. All right. So if you don't do a 529, you don't do a custodial account, you don't want to give it to the parents, you don't want to give it to the kids outright, what do you do with it? Well, you can give it to a trust. okay? We've done this for people countless times, either as part of an overall estate plan, where somebody says, look, if I'm not around, I want my estate to go to my kids, and I want to do a carve out. I want to carve, pick a number, 10% of my estate out, and I want that to go to my grandkids, or I want certain dollar amounts to go to my grandkids. But a trust is one of the ways that we do a lot of this gifting that needs to have some control placed around it, because you can set up all the rules. You can say, I'm leaving a chunk of my estate to my grandkids. Sales proceeds of my house, half my house, a quarter of my house, whatever you're thinking about, that can get carved out, and that can either get put into a separate grandchildren's trust, or we just put this language in your existing trust. The language usually goes something like this. And I want the sales proceeds of my house to be distributed to my grandchildren, usually something along the lines of equally alive at my passing, right? So you got to survive grandpa, you got to survive grandma, you got to be, so that's how you kind of get the legacy, if you will. And then we'll put some rules on it. And the rules will go something like, the grandkids get it when they turn 25, and they might get the other half when they turn 30, okay? And then before those ages, that money can be used to pay for things like a college tuition. Somebody moves off campus, they need to pay for some rent, the trust can pay their rent. The kid needs a car. The trust can buy them a car, a Jeep, not a Ferrari, right? This is what the trust is designed. You've set the rules up. And then at 25, they get to raise their hand and say, look, according to grandpa, grandma, nana, whatever you guys go by, I'm entitled to half of my money. The trustee is going to say, here you go, here's half your money. And at 30, the trustee is going to say, here's the other half of your money. Now the idea, and those dates, those ages, for us, those are just starting points. Everybody has their own history. Everybody knows all the players. Everybody knows how people are going to behave. I don't know the answer to that. You guys do. We're just going to take our steps from you guys. We take our instructions from you. We've had people come in and say, I don't want them to get it until they're 40 and 50. Other people come in and say, I don't care. 21, that's fine. If they blow themselves up at 21, that's up to them. We did a plan one time for a husband and a wife. They came in the office, and we sat down, and they had 2 daughters. And so the wife says, yeah, I got your plan, Jay, 25, 30. That sounds pretty good. I think that we're okay with that. The kids can get a 50-50 split, all that stuff. And the husband was adamant that they never get the money. He wanted to put all kinds of handcuffs and strings on this money, and he didn't want them to ever be able to get any of the principal and just the income, and he's doing math in his head. And I'm watching this unfold, and it's not, my job is just to referee this. And so I kind of sit back and watch this whole thing, and I'm putting some input in and kind of giving some feedback. And at one point, he says, I just don't want the guys. I don't want the guys to get the money. I don't want the guys to get the money. And then the wife slams her hand on the table, and she says, Bob, they don't even have boyfriends. They both went to Ivy League colleges. I think they're going to be okay. And I said, wait a minute. They're not even dating anybody? She goes, no, they're both single. They're independent, strong, professional. They're not dating a person. I said, you're all worried about boyfriends that don't even exist yet, or son-in-laws that haven't even shown up. This guy was like so paranoid that some nameless, faceless guy was going to steal his money. And I said, okay, I'm going to step out of the room. I'll let you guys hammer this out. Just knock on the door when you're ready. That was the idea. That was the idea. So they were very worried about kids, grandkids getting money. That's what happens. And when we do a lot of the trusts that we do for clients, the trusts will say, if it goes to the kids, that's the plan, fine. If it doesn't go to the kids or something happens to one of the kids, it rolls down to the grandkids. And then we ask you to put those dates on there, those ages on there, to give us some guidance. The other reason that the trust and this type of arrangement works out really well is because somebody touched on it over here. The probate court doesn't assume that moms and dads have their act together. Okay? So if you leave money to minor children in your will. If you make minor children the beneficiary of a life insurance policy, when that paperwork gets filed in the probate court to probate the sale of the house so that the money can go to the grandkids, because there's minor grandkids involved, the probate court is more than likely going to insist on a guardian being appointed for your grandchildren to make sure that your interest that you want them to get goes to them. They don't assume that mom and dad have their act together. So now you're going to get some random lawyer pulled off a list who's going to come in and say, I just need to make sure that your trust, that your insurance money and that the money from your bank account or the sales proceeds of the house goes to the kid in a conservatorship account, which involves more lawyers, which nobody loves, right? More fees, more expenses, more costs. It doesn't make it easier, it makes it more difficult. So we always try to be on if it's already included in your trust, I don't have that problem. If you're just leaving it to minor kids outright and the probate court gets involved, they're going to want somebody looking over your shoulder to make sure that it goes to the right place. They don't assume, even though it's your mom and dad and the kids, mom and dad could have their act totally together, they don't assume that's the case for all the obvious reasons, right? That's what we do, is come up with all these crazy scenarios. Yes?
I don't mean to overcomplicate things, but if you have to go into a nursing home
Yep.
and, you have that money in the trust,
Sure.
the nursing home can reach that if it's not irrevocable trust?
Yep, let's talk about that. Yep. So this is the other caveat that we add to everybody's gifting wish list. We say to them, if you give money away, and if you're worried that, and nobody can predict this, but if we're worried that a nursing home is potentially in somebody's future, and a trip to the nursing home and showing up on the front door of the nursing home could involve a Medicaid mass health application, this is where the gifting gets tricky, because Medicaid will say, oh, before we approve you, do me a favor, would you be a sport, send me 5 years of your banking and your financial transactions so I can see what you did with your money. And if in that paperwork it says, gift 2 grandkids, gift 2 grandkids, gift 2 grandkids, gift 2 grandkids, and they see all these checks going out the door, Medicaid gets a little squirrely about that because they don't like that. They don't like you trying to give all your money away and then showing up hat in hand, waiting for them to pay the bill. When somebody's making those gifts, what we might say to somebody is what you just said, which is, well, if we're going to do a bunch of those gifts, we don't want to create a 5-year rolling look-back period. Maybe we'll do one big gift. We'll do it to an irrevocable trust. We'll start the clock ticking for Medicaid planning purposes, and then 5 years and a day, hopefully that money is free and clear from a Medicaid planning perspective. And that might be where a piece of real estate goes into a trust for the benefit of grandkids, or half the benefit of grandkids, half the benefit of kids. We can kind of play around with that, but that's the problem. When you make gifts and you find yourself on the other side of the Medicaid process and you haven't been through the 5 years, that's okay. Medicaid just wants you to cure all the gifts, right? And then you know what happens. You're all thinking in your head, okay, let me think, out of all my grandkids, let's see what would happen. I can tell you right now. So the daughters usually say, oh, I put it in the bank, it's in a CD, it's earning 4%. I'll run down and get it for you right now, Nana, not a problem. The boys bought a car, bought a boat, went to Vegas, got a girlfriend, got an ex-girlfriend. That's what happens all the time, right? So the gifting is okay, you just need to be conscious of the implications of the gift. And this is important because where this happens a lot, and I keep using real estate as an example, is somebody says, the house wasn't working out anymore, they sold the house, they sold whatever it was, and I wanted, that's the legacy, so I want to give it away now. So we can talk about that, but we try to warn everybody, this is what you have to be worried about, this is the risk that you're going to potentially run into. So gifting, Got to be careful of that 5-year look back. Medicaid, and don't hold me to this because they always change the number. It's always a moving target. But they're usually looking for gifts of $1,000 or north of $1,000. So whenever we do a Mass Health application, Mass Health will say, send us a breakdown of all the transactions of over $1,000 and where the money went. And everybody has check view on their statements now so we can kind of see where it goes. But Medicaid doesn't care about a $50 gift. You give somebody a Christmas gift, they don't care about that. They're looking for checks. They're looking for decent sized checks. That's where you run into a problem. That's where it becomes an issue, okay? So all those ways we talked about, 529s, custodial accounts, we'll do a lot of trust work for people. Any questions on that? Okay, so let's talk about when it's a problem. Let's talk about when maybe you want to make some gifting options available, but you probably shouldn't for a couple of reasons. One of the things that we see quite a bit is grandparents want to give some money to one of their grandkids, but for some reason their grandchild has some type of disability, some type of health issue. They have something that's part of this grandchild's life permanently, okay? And they want to be able to give money, but they're worried about benefits that grandchild might be getting. In most cases, it's Medicaid, usually as a health insurance piece of the puzzle. They're worried about the grandchild losing those benefits, okay? So what we'll do in those cases is we'll set up what's called a special needs trust. Essentially, it's a trust that you would set up that says, if this money, if some of my money, if whatever the dollar amount is, finds its way to grandchild A, I want it to go to them, but I want it to go in this type of trust. And that trust usually has some rules written into it that say that this money is to be used as a supplemental funding source for things that are not provided for by Medicaid or Mass Health or whatever government benefit somebody's getting. So what you're trying to do is you're basically trying to create a slush fund, if you will, that can be used to provide some additional benefits, quality of life things that somebody might not otherwise have available to them because of a particular program that they might be on. We see this a lot when somebody just forgets to do the planning. And all of a sudden something happens and somebody passes away and we get a frantic call that says either the will leaves a bunch of money to the grandkids and my kid is one of the grandkids and they're on these benefits and they're going to lose them, and the benefits are really have more value to me than just getting this money that I would love to get, but the two are incompatible. So you have to make sure that you either set up something like a special needs trust, or you have to evaluate, can I leave this money to the kids and give them the pinky promise of I will use this for good and I will use this for your wishes as intended. You don't have to carve out specifically that this money should go to them. Sometimes that works better when the dollar amounts aren't substantial. If it's $5,000 or $2,000 or something like that, that can be enough. There's also a theory that says, look, if the money goes to your kids, your grandkids benefit indirectly as well. The kids, that depends on you guys, that's up to them. But that's the biggest thing we see, okay? The other thing we see is the gifts don't have to just be money. We always see cars. Something happens to Nana or Papa, and that car is sitting in the driveway. A 16-year-old's heart breaks every single day that they don't have the keys to that car, okay? And it's sitting there and it's driving them crazy. If you leave a car to somebody, it has to go through some hoops at the probate court, and that car counts. That's money, right? So if you give your car to somebody and it's over $19,000, you give them your Ferrari, there's a gift tax return that has to be filed, right? You give them your '83 Corolla, you're in the clear, right? So gifts are not just money, it's also things like cars. And then the other thing we see is jewelry. People want to have a piece of something that's been sentimental, it's been in the family a long time, it's a watch, it's a necklace. Those are things that you either give away while you can make the gift and you say, look, I want you to have this gift. This is the ring that I've been worn for. It was your great-grandmother's ring. It's your great-great-great-great-grandmother's ring. It's been a family heirloom. I want you to get it. You do that gift while you're alive. Or when we do a plan for our clients, we have them draft up what's called a personal memo. It's basically a letter. They sit down, they write personal memo across the top of the piece of paper. I want the wedding ring to go here. I want the candlesticks to go here. I want the cuckoo clock to go here. And that gets followed by your executor. You've written it down. It's known as incorporation by reference. It's a legal principle that means that the person who's carrying out your wishes is going to follow those instructions. That's another way to make sure that things that you have that aren't necessarily cash get where you want them to go. Okay?
Is that the same as a memo of wishes? Memorandum of wishes?
Maybe. I say that because I think a memorandum of wishes could be interpreted, just the way you're saying it, could be something along the lines of, these are my healthcare wishes if something happens to me. But if it's about personality or about personal items, personal memo of wishes, same thing. Could be the same thing.
Does that have to be notarized?
It does not need to be notarized. I'd like you to sign it. I'd love you to date it so there's no competing letters downstream that somebody writes, right? But that's the way you would do it. You'd write it up, you'd sign it. Then if you change your mind, right, you know, your kids say, I don't want that necklace. That's ugly as sin. I wouldn't wear that on a bet. Whoa, whoa, whoa. You tear the memo up, fine, they're not getting the necklace. Then a week later, they come in, I'm sorry, I didn't know what I was talking about. I love it, I love it, I love it. Tear it up, you write a new one. That's what happens, right? And you don't need to put a bunch of lawyers in a room and all that other stuff. It's just something that you write up, sign. And if you don't do it, then you're basically setting up a Yankee swap at the house. That's what you're doing, right? Everyone's going to pull this stuff out. Now, the best way I ever heard this done was somebody had passed away. The executor came in. They put everything all over the house. Everybody walked around. I want this. I want that. I'll take this. I'll take that. And everybody came back, and they all sat in the living room in a big circle in all the chairs. And everybody had all their stuff. And then the executive said, all right, give everything that you collected to the person on your right. That's it. Now go do all your stuff. So you don't know. You don't know. So if you're doing things like that, things that aren't money, you got to either do it while you're alive, or you got to make it crystal clear what happens after you're gone, where you want that stuff to go. And if you have anybody in your family that you want to get any type of resources, any type of legacy, if getting that legacy could affect them negatively, you might want to just figure out whether or not it needs to be a special needs trust, or they could just be bad with money. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a special needs trust. You would just change the parameters of how and when they get that money, like we discussed earlier. They don't get it at 25 and 30. They get it at 35 and 40, or 40 and 45. Maybe they never get it. Maybe they never get all of it. You would be the one to decide if and or when, how they get it. Okay?